Hi, this is Coding Jerk. A text editor have been my most important program for the past 20 years. I do almost everything in it. I write code, take notes, make to-do lists, write scripts, and even create slides for my videos. And in today's video, I will tell you about the most promising, relatively new editor out here, Zed. It has everything I value in editors. It's aimed at developers who know what they want. It's feature-rich and customizable, but very fast at the same time. And for my own needs, it has awesome multi-cursors and Helix mod support. And for some other people, it has pretty good interaction with LLMs with the ability to turn it off completely with one switch. So today I will show you some, in my opinion, killer features, share some thoughts on the editor's pros and cons, and compare it with other editors I have used. But first, I have a disclaimer. This video is sponsored, and the sponsor is the Zed team, but hear me out. I respect my audience the most, and you guys, the only reason I keep making videos on this channel. And even though it's sponsored, I will be as honest as possible, especially considering that the Zed team gave me full freedom in this video. So I can just share my honest opinion. And for sure, I don't want to sell you something I don't like myself or I don't think is worth your time. Yeah, so if you're still with me, some more facts and let's begin. My workhorse editor is NeoVim. I was trying to do a full transition to Zed from Helix around 10 months ago, around of time of this commit in my dot files. In the end, I decided that Helix was not flexible enough and Zed was missing some important features, so I switched back to NeoVim. Yeah, and I was checking out Zed editor even before that. I liked it and I wanted to make a video about it in the far future, but Zed team made it happen now. Okay, so let me show you the editor. Actually, you have already been looking at my Zed setup for quite a while. I have a very minimalistic configuration and normally you can expect to see something more like this. Anyway, I like to hide everything distracting, so let's keep checking it out from my setup. First, let's look at some basic features and then I will cover some advanced ones, including, in my opinion, killer features. So first, Zed, like any modern editor, support all popular platforms: Windows, macOS and Linux. Sadly, no Temple OS support yet. Yeah, it also has built-in support for almost every language you want to use, thanks to the LSP entry seeder. So here is syntax highlighting, here is autocompletion, here are diagnostics, go to definition, rename symbol, find all references, Git integration, automatic code formatting on save, which I love and hate, and so on. Everything that you expect from a modern editor. I won't go into details here, but overall everything basic is here, works smoothly and is very fast. Now let me show you some advanced features which I use and like the most. First one is a multi-buffer. Imagine you have a big project and want to change the signature of a function. Usually it will require you to also change all the calls to that function. And normally you will search for all the calls, maybe using file references, and then go one by one, opening each file. But in that, search and find references open in a multi-buffer, as you can see now. And you can edit all these files right here at the same time. First time I saw this feature, I was like, wow, I want this in Helix. That was the editor I used back then. But actually, that team put Helix into Zed first. Sadly, it was after the time I considered switching. Anyway, let me explain what's Helix mode and why I like it. Sorry if you're Helix or Vim enjoyer already, but I will try to explain it in a very casual way. So Helix is essentially a rethink of the Vim editor. And Vim is famous for its modal editing. Essentially, instead of using Ctrl and Alt keys for commands like the most editors, and therefore requiring you to use key combos a lot, or sometimes even mouse, Vim introduced mods. In insert mode, you can type your text as usual, but if you want to do some editing, copy, paste, format, go to definition, or just move around the file, you will need to switch to the so-called normal mode. And having a special mode where keys do not insert text but perform some actions is surprisingly a very efficient way to edit and navigate text, which is why Vim itself and Vim plugins and extensions are so popular among programmers. Zed has this Vim mod built in, allowing you to do modal editing already. So, for example, to change a word in normal mode, you can just type C and W, change word. C is an action to tell if you want to change something, and W is a motion to tell what exactly you want to change. This is very efficient and fast already, but let me show you Helix. In it, you will need to do the same thing backwards. First, make a motion, W, which will not just move the cursor like in Vim, but also select the word, and then you can apply an action to it, C to change in our case. So before you apply an action, you can actually see what exactly will be affected. This motion-first approach is more intuitive and in some cases allow for more orthogonal commands. I'm a big fan of Helix model editing, but couldn't switch to Helix itself even after using it for more than a year. So I am really happy to see it in Zed. And actually Helix had one more nice feature I really miss in NeoVim. It is well-implemented multi-cursors. Yes, they are available in NeoVim with plugins, but they are all pretty buggy and could be slow with big files. In Zed, like in Helix, they are built in from the start, they work very smoothly and can be combined with every editor feature, including Vim and Helix modes. If you don't use multi-cursors yet, let me show you some fancy quick edits I like to do almost daily. First one is renaming a word. Here, for example, I have a function counting the apples in a list. And I want to create another one for oranges. So here I should rename all occurrences of apple. With multi-cursors, I can just select the first one, then press Ctrl D a few times to select their occurrences. Then I can just type new name and voila. Another example is turning a bunch of lines into a list of strings. So you have lines like this and you want to make a Python list out of them. First, create a multi-cursors for every line. Then remove all extra stuff here, then wrap each line in quotes, and finally add commas to separate the items. Oh yeah, and now cancel the multi-cursors and wrap everything in square brackets. Again, all this is pretty intuitive to learn and feels great to use. And to actually blow your mind, multi-cursors can be used in a multi-buffer. Remember our last example with changing the function signature? Here we can use multi-cursors to change all the calls at once. That's how using Zed most of the time feels like. It has all the features and they work nicely together. Before I go to summarize pros and cons, let me also quickly show some features I don't use often or don't like to use at all, but they could be interesting for you. AI integration. If you're still copying and pasting code from ChatGPT, in that you can just ask to transform your code in place, like select a function, press Ctrl-Enter, then ask for a change. And here you go, no switching context. To generate some new code, it's similar, same hotkey without selection, enter your prompt, and code will be inserted right here. I found myself not using AI to generate or change my code that way, but for some that could be interesting. Zed also has integrations with Cloud Code Agent, GitHub Copilot Edits Prediction, and more AI stuff I haven't even heard about. Yeah, and if you are an AI hater or your company forbids it, you can easily disable everything AI related with one switch in settings. Another feature I don't use is collaboration. I remember right before the AI hype went out of control, Zed was advertised mostly as a collaborative code editor. That wasn't my thing at all, and to be honest, I'm too introverted to interact with people. And since I'm not the person to ask about this feature, if you are interested, I recommend you check out this talk on DevXConf, and also this blog post from the Zed team about it. The last potentially interesting feature for you is remote development. Zed again have built-in support to connect to remote servers to edit files there and run terminal commands. In cases I need something like that, I just mount a remote file system with SSHFS to my local machine. So I don't need this feature, but I saw many people using similar stuff in VS Code. Okay, so let me summarize Zed Pros from my point of view. Performance. Yeah, Zed is a native app, unlike some Electron-based stuff out here, so it's blazingly fast and efficient with resources. Built-in features. I show you some features already, but there are a lot more, including some unique ones. Customization. Settings are in a JSON file, which you can easily edit to configure almost everything. There are a lot of features in the editor itself, but Zed also have a plugin system and a built-in plugin manager. Documentation. I really like then software I use has good documentation. So in case I want to learn about configuration or find out some new features, I can easily find it in text. For Zed, they have zed.dev/docs. Okay, but there are also things I don't like. UI is not fully customizable. In editors like Atom or VS Code, you can basically hack the whole UI and change almost everything in any way, because they are essentially web apps. Since Zed is a native app, it's not that flexible, and we need developers to add options to control some parts of the UI. For example, hiding the status bar is an experimental feature now, and I'm waiting for the option to hide the title bar to be released. File picker could be better. There are some small things missing here and there, but overall everything in Zed is fine, at least for me, except for the file picker. Like, the command palette is very nice to use. Symbol picker is okay too, but from the file picker I expect the ability to preview files before opening them, like this in Helix or this in my NeoVim setup with Telescope. And currently this is missing, so for me it's a downside. Actually, that's all I can say about cons from my point of view, but for some people here are some potential issues. Fewer plugins than VS Code or NeoVim. Even though that is a relatively new editor, it has a surprisingly huge amount of extensions, but it's still less than in other popular editors. That uses more RAM than terminal editors. That is very efficient with CPU and GPU, but sometimes it means using more RAM for caching and preloading stuff. So if you are on a very low RAM machine, like 1 GB or less, consider Helix or NeoVim instead. That is aimed at experienced developers. It's not like with Vim, where you have to learn a lot and set up many things yourself to be productive, but for beginners, an IDE could be a better choice. I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone, but while learning programming, I recommend reducing the amount of stuff you have to learn at once to minimize the frustration of constantly hitting walls. And IDEs are usually helpful in that until you need to dive deeper. Okay, and just a brief comparison with other editors I have used. VS Code. That is faster, and that alone is enough for me. It's also fully open source and focused more on experienced developers. And even though it has a lot of built-in features, it feels less bloated. Sublime Text. Sublime Text was fast and lightweight, but it was developed in the pre-LSP era, and nowadays it feels like it's Abaddon. Not to mention that Sublime was closed source, paid software. Helix. Helix was my favorite editor for a long time, but the main reason I quit it is its very slow development speed. I have monitored some features for months and tried to push my own PRs without answer for the same period. I understand that being a maintainer is hard, but in the end I need issues to be resolved and PR merged, and that is much more active in that. Vim and NeoVim. I have used Vim and NeoVim for years, and it's an awesome editor. I would say I like everything in it except for the action motion model, and that some things can be really buggy. The most annoying thing for me is how the scroll bar breaks when I enable soft wrapping to edit markdown files. Another issue is that Vim and NeoVim are terminal applications, and therefore some things had to be implemented with hacks and workarounds. Like, you cannot just draw a ruler under the text. You will have to write actual Unicode characters looking like a ruler, resulting in all kinds of plugin conflicts who will try to hack around terminal limitations. Also, NeoVim requires a lot more configuration to get to the same level of features, but you are in full control of everything. Oh yeah, and NeoVim is very lightweight, but with average setup with LSP and a bunch of plugins, editing will slow down a bit. And if I was asked to say what I think about it overall, I would say this. You know, most of the time, the more features software has, the slower it becomes. But if developers are putting performance first, it can be both fast and feature-rich. And that is exactly that. I definitely recommend you try it out yourself and let me know what you think in the comments. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one.